Mr. Ambassador, let me initially ask you something personal. Could you tell us how the ongoing pandemic has been affecting your professional life as the EU's ambassador in Ankara?
Thank you very much, first of all, for the opportunity to talk to you. On that question, it's quite an interesting question because, you know, we had to cope with a new situation here. I mean, what does an ambassador do, or what does a delegation do? Of course, we talk to people, we reach out to people, we engage with people across the country, and of course, that has been really limited now and hampered now. So going and seeing people is now more difficult. Traveling the country is more difficult, but you know, luckily we discovered new platforms like this one we're talking on now, and we could reach out. And actually, what we did was we reached out to people through this platform. So we have weekly meetings. We have meetings with the chambers of commerce across the country to talk about the economic impact of the Corona crisis. We meet with people on certain subjects, like on doctors who deal with patients in the hospitals, or with people who work in the tourist industry who see how they are affected. So we try to compensate. But of course, nothing can compensate for having a cup of coffee with somebody directly.
And on the 8th of April 2020, the European Commission and the High Representative set out plans for a robust and targeted EU response to support partners' countries' effort in tackling the coronavirus pandemic. In that respect, the EU secured 800 million euros for the Western Balkans and Turkey. In exchange, President Erdogan joined the EU-led efforts to fund the development of a vaccine and treatments for COVID-19. May I ask you if this current EU-Turkey cooperation in the fight against COVID-19 has created new avenues and accelerated the dialogue to revisit some of the long-standing issues between Brussels and Ankara?
Let me perhaps answer this in two parts. One, the cooperation because of COVID-19 and the Corona crisis in general. I think what we have seen around the globe, that cooperation, engagement, solidarity is very important. So we've seen this within the European Union member states themselves, but also with our closest partners. And what is also important, we have to make sure that our economies can be put on their feet again, and that our societies can overcome the effect that we have seen by the lockdown and by travel restrictions and many other things. So there, and that you mentioned already a very important example of the conference that we had early May in Brussels, or rather, actually, it was an internet conference to get pledges for finding a vaccine. And Turkey indeed took part, immediately agreed to take part. President Erdogan sent a message, an important message to this conference, and also Turkey committed to contribute financially to this. But that's one thing, I would say. And we have done a lot of very practical things, trying to make sure that borders are open, that the trade can flow, trucks can cross borders, people can cross. I mean, the truck drivers, for example, at the Bulgarian and the Greek borders, and many other very practical things, including bringing people back home, both European citizens from Turkey to the European Union, but also Turkish citizens through the European Civil Protection Mechanism could take part in this program. And we did a repatriation flight from Latin America for Turkish citizens only a few weeks ago. So that's, I think, the Corona side. What we have also seen in the last few months, I would say, ever since the new Commission came into office, or the new leadership in Brussels came into office, this heightened engagement between the European Union and Turkey. And this predates obviously Corona. But it also shows the conviction inside the European Union how important engaging and dialogue is. When I came here in 2016, the relationship was pretty tense. You know, we had lots of political problems, lots of problems between Turkey and individual member states. But we also very quickly understood that we need to talk, we need to engage. Because of the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean, again, this came to a standstill. But with Mrs. von der Leyen coming in, talking to Mr. Erdogan on the first day in her office, Mr. Michel has already visited twice Turkey. Mr. Borrell is talking to the Minister of Foreign Affairs on a constant basis. It basically shows that given the geopolitical situation of Turkey, the relationship with the European Union, the partnership that we have had, and the many links that we have, including not least the economy, makes it very important that we engage and take this dialogue forward. So, as I said, there are two issues: Corona, which has it's a very specific track, but there is also a general track of engagement because of the many issues other than Corona that we have in common with Turkey.
Mr. Ambassador, an amendment on cutting pre-accession funds to Turkey was voted by the European Parliament on 14 May 2020, and this amendment was turned down by the majority of members of European Parliament. And in that respect, the EU is to provide Turkey with around 168 million euros for Turkey's pre-accession funds in 2020. Can you tell us if all the eligible civil society organizations in Turkey can really benefit from the mentioned financial support provided by the European Union, irrespective of their political orientations?
Well, yes, you're right. The budget is around that figure. What we also know from the member states and from the European Parliament and the Commission itself, a very strong interest in supporting civil society. I mean, I think it's well known that the European Union is the biggest supporter of civil society organizations around the globe. So also here in Turkey, we are very strong supporters. We have a close engagement with civil society organizations. And we have done this for a long time in very close cooperation with the Ministry for European Affairs, as it used to be called, and now with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And we have also our direct engagement with civil society organizations. And we understand civil society organizations in the broadest term. But it's not only classical political or human rights organizations, really in the broadest terms. It includes the environment, transportation, economic organizations that really deal with the aspects of daily life of the citizens of these countries. And we have said that we will want to broaden this support. We want to work with the government on broadening the space for civil society. We also want to engage in bringing together the local administration of Turkey with civil society organizations in their specific area and regions. And we want to enhance the cooperation between civil society organizations in Turkey and in the European Union. I don't know what you mean by political orientation. I mean, as long as people...
Your Excellency, I mean that there have been a lot of civil society organizations which were closed down as part of some undemocratic steps following the coup attempt that happened in 2016. So well, that's what I mean.
Yes, we work, of course, with all organizations that are functioning, because, as you know, there are certain also financial requirements and administrative requirements. So we need an organization that is functioning. But I also come back to what I said in my introduction, that we want to broaden the space in which civil society can work. That also means that organizations that may have been closed in the past to see if they can be reopened, because there are certain processes that these organizations go through. We of course have a legal requirement that we can only work with those organizations that are in existence, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Ambassador, the relations between the European Union and Turkey have been backsliding tremendously, and particularly since the attempted coup that took place back in 2016 against the Turkish government. And on the one hand, Turkish government has been expressing its criticisms to the EU, claiming that Brussels has not supported Ankara enough in Turkey's efforts against the coup. And on the other hand, you have thousands of people, you name it, lawyers, teachers, civil society representatives, regular citizens, who become subjects of undemocratic steps in the post-coup period, have been also, interestingly, accusing and criticizing the EU for doing very little, if nothing, in supporting Turkey's democracy, rule of law, and particularly human rights. So, Mr. Ambassador, how do you really balance in between these two opposing positions? And more importantly, if I may ask you, do you think has the EU been successful in reaching not only out to Turkish government, but also to the progressive segments of Turkish society who are known to be very supportive to Turkey's EU accession process?
Yes, you're right. I mean, you get of course different messages and different and different concerns that are being voiced either by the government or by other people. Now, first of all, on your first point, I think we have made it very clear that we did not condone, and we certainly oppose the attempted coup in 2016. And messages have been very strong from the European leadership in that respect, also in the aftermath of the coup. At the very same time, we also made the point that Turkey is an accession country, therefore has to follow certain requirements, particularly in the area of rule of law. And we have always kept insisting that if you need to prosecute people that were involved in the coup, obviously it has to be done on the basis of the rule of law and democratic procedures. We have also worked very closely with the Council of Europe and with the Venice Commission and with others in discussing these issues and making suggestions and proposals, and also have followed very closely what the Turkish government has been doing, for example, in setting up various committees that look into all this. We have also very much engaged with Turkey on their justice reforms program, or justice reform strategy, as it is called. And also provide support, and we provide also recommendations in what should be done. So we're trying to walk a line between what is necessary in order to uphold democratic institutions in this country, but also to see that this is done within, of course, the rule of law. And we have a number of programs and projects running with the Council of Europe to reinforce this point. When it comes to the part of society that is very pro-European, yes, we see this in the polls. It's a very strong part of the population. It's fluctuating. I mean, often we hear it's about 50% or higher. We have seen polls recently; it showed even 75%. So there is a very strong engagement with the European Union. But the support that we're giving to civil society, the engagement that we have, the discussions that we have with the government, the attempts that we make, or the support that we give for broadening the space for these organizations and people, I think is recognized and we pick up. I give you one example. I know there's a lot of criticism about freedom of the press and expression in Turkey. So we, of course, raised this issue because it's a very important aspect under the accession process and the report that the Commission has done every year. But at the very same time, I think we also put our money where our mouth is, so to speak, and we try to help by having set up very specific projects that is supporting journalists, either to provide a place of work or to help also in economic terms, because many people are now unemployed. So we're trying to combine both, to work on the regulatory framework, to broaden the space where people can work, but also to provide very concrete support in terms of projects and programs.
Referring to the Turkish drilling activities within disputed waters in the Eastern Mediterranean, High Representative Josep Borrell said that some member states believe that as long as drilling activities continue, talks with Turkey must be stopped. But at the same time, he said that the only way to resolve this issue is to make Turkey understand that our good relations will highly depend on the respect of sovereignty of Cyprus and Greece in disputed waters. How do you think the EU can balance between these two conflicting positions of Turkey and Cyprus and Greece, where on the one hand, the EU pledges to keep the dialogue with Turkey open, and on the other hand, it has to stand for its two member states over their rights of sovereignty against Turkey?
Well, first of all, the European Union has been very, very clear on the situation in the Eastern Mediterranean in support of Cyprus, but also in support of Greece. One was already last year, and the other one was very strong also this year, because of the evolving situation in the Eastern Mediterranean. But we, at the very same time, as you know, I mean, as we have said before, Turkey is a candidate country, and one of the key aspects of candidateship or accession to the European Union is good neighborly relations. So this is one of the very strong aspects of the accession process to strengthen, I mean, to improve and to strengthen the relationship with the immediate neighbors, in this case, Greece and Cyprus. This is a point I think we have been making all the time, and we're making it also with countries, other countries that are in the accession process. So this is nothing new. Now, we have been also very clear that as European Union, obviously, we need to engage with Turkey, and we need to bring across certain messages. So I don't see really a contradiction between the two things. On the one hand, to make very clear what our position is, the position of our member states is. Our member states and all the other member states have expressed on numerous occasions their solidarity with Cyprus and also now with Greece. But at the same time, we need to resolve these issues. Mr. Borrell is, as we speak, he is in the region. He's traveling. He was in Greece and also in Cyprus. So he's engaged in this, and he was also mandated to speak and discuss all these issues with the foreign minister of Turkey. You may recall President Erdogan was in Brussels in early March, had a meeting with President Michel and President von der Leyen. And there, from that point on, we developed a dialogue with our Turkish counterparts in discussing a broad number of issues. I mean, mainly focused on the migration situation and on the statement of 2016 on migration, but also broader than that. So I don't think there is a contradiction between the two things that the European Union is doing. On the contrary, I think the European Union needs to engage and needs to bring across its point.
Mr. Ambassador, let me ask you about your take on Turkey's military engagement in Libya. Does Turkey's foot on the ground in Libya hampers EU's objectives, not only for Tripoli, but also for Northern African region? What would be your take on that?
First of all, the EU has been supporting and has been positively commenting on the attempts to reach a ceasefire in Libya. And there was a meeting Mr. Borrell had with the foreign ministers of France, Germany, and Italy in the aftermath of that. I think they pointed out very clearly what the position of the European Union is. So we want the ceasefire to hold. We want international law to be respected, the decisions of the Security Council. That means that foreign military presence, mercenaries, and foreign equipment, military equipment that has been brought into the country has to be removed. So, and this whole thing has to be done in the context of the political process, the Berlin process, and in support of what the United Nations is doing, and the Office of the United Nations Secretary General's representative is doing in brokering this ceasefire in the country. So that is basically our position on the situation in Libya at the moment.
Mr. Ambassador, last but certainly not least, if you have to make a list of the best Turkish food that you tried, what would be your top 3 dishes?
I don't think I can leave it at 3. Let me. I mean, as I said before, I have traveled a lot in the country, and I've discovered many dishes that are not necessarily on the menu of tourists when they come to the country, because they're very, very special for the region. So let me maybe mention a few that tourists maybe do not see that or taste that often. I mean, one of my favorite dishes is from the Black Sea region is hamsi pilaf, which is, as you know, fish together with rice. Another one is a lamb dish with aubergine. This is the ali nazik kebab, which is one of my favorites. Really? One dish I really like, because it's also a very social dish in my view, is güveç. So you bring together all the beautiful tastes of vegetables and meat into one big pot. You let it cook, and then you sit around the table and you share it out with your friends and neighbors. I think it really symbolizes for me the Turkish culture. of bringing these good things together and meeting with your friends. So there are many other very specific dishes. I have my favorite soup, for example, is the mother and daughter soup, if you've heard of it, which is a favorite dish in Gaziantep, but also Malatya. No, I mean there are so many dishes that you can really enjoy in this country. It's very difficult to come up, but I think my classic and my favorite for a long time already is imam bailey.
Wow. Two very quick comment. I'm very happy that you like a dish from Malatya. Myself, I'm from Malatya. Yeah. And secondly, it's very interesting to see that the dishes you like are from different parts of Turkey, covering almost all Turkey. Mr. Ambassador, it's been a really pleasure. Thank you so much. It's an honor to talk to you, and we wish you all the best.